Okay, I think that's us on. Yep. Okay, good to go, man.
Good to go.
Okay. Hi, guys. I've got with me here someone I've been arguing with on Facebook for quite a few months, but generally I think get on pretty well with him. So I thought I'd invite him on to just chat about the Rugby World Cup Quarter Finals the past weekend, and we'll see how we get on. And introduce you all to Nigel Quigley. How you doing, Nigel?
How you doing? You all right, Cam?
Yeah, good man. Right, we're just gonna go through the Rugby World Cup quarterfinals, just talk about them, see what we think of the games, bounce off each other how we think teams could have done worse, better, etc. along those lines, and probably talk a bit about the aftermath as well, and maybe going forward to the semi-finals next week. I'm sure they'll all just come up as we go through them, so we'll just go on. We'll start with talking about the England-Australia game. Finished England 40, Australia 16. How impressed were you by England, Nigel, and how disappointed were you by Australia, or vice versa?
Not really surprised by Australia, to be honest. Don't think they've been at their peak for a few years now. England, first real test with the French game being cancelled. Very impressed with them, if I'm honest. What I like about them this World Cup this season, in fact, they've really got a mobile pack, but a big pack. You can see they've worked heavily on offloading in the pack as well. They gain lots of meters by offloading between the forwards.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got the likes of Tuilagi. They've got their back three are flying machines, and quite big lads, a couple of them as well. So they've impressed me. They really have impressed me, and I did think they'd beat Australia. They didn't disappoint me, but from what I've seen of them in the Six Nations and Australia in the Rugby Championship, I didn't think they'd beat England. They just had too much in their locker for them. Mm-hmm. But the Australian back row would be very key, and they were a touch anonymous for given the personnel. I thought, but again, that's got to be a bit of credit to England and the pressure they put especially in the set pieces and in the rucks and mauls. They were fantastic. They were very, very impressive, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say about the Australian back row there. That's one of the areas I was quite surprised that England were able to keep the likes of Hooper and Pocock pretty quiet for the most part. I mean, I don't remember them being. I think there was a few breakdowns, but I don't. On the whole, broadly speaking, I don't think I remember them having too much of an impact on the game as much as I expected them to anyway by their standards. I think. Yeah, you're right about the England overall, but the interesting thing is they only had about, I think, 38% possession, which is something. Because Australia, I just remember they had most of the ball, and I honestly didn't think there was. I mean, I thought England were on top, but I didn't think there was a massive gain in momentum until about, I think, about the 62nd minute when Australia had an attack, and then they just England. I think was it Curry or Sinclair? They just ripped the ball from an Aussie attack and in the breakdown, and then they just turned over, and then the game just completely swung England's way, and they just sealed it from there. Really, so
probably Curry, because he was absolutely superb.
Oh yeah, no, he was brilliant. Yeah, I mean,
but you make a very good point, because Australia were in the English 22 plenty of times.
Aye.
And didn't come away with anything. And every time England got into their 22, they came away with something. As the old adage, taking your chances. England took their chances. Every time they got in there, they came away with something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
They were in there and coming away with nothing. So, but again, that's the English defence, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think John Mitchell coming in there has made a massive impact. Said that before. I think that's actually been their biggest asset this year, is getting him in his defence coach. And I think, yeah, agree with you there. Just how well they did defend, how clinical they were. It was almost like watching like a good South Africa in a lot of ways. But yeah, and as you say, they did look really good. My only thing with England, though, if we're going to look ahead a little bit, is I still look at those games in the Six Nations against Wales and Scotland, and just how they mentally capitulated in the second half of both games. And I
think we can't. Yeah, they've had an easy run so far. I think in the sense that we come up against quality opposition, and that's not taken away from Australia. But Australia haven't had a great tournament either.
No, yeah.
So, they've got some great individuals. They've not been great. So we probably can't read too much into that game on Saturday, except to say what we watched, and they played what was in front of them, and they were impressive in that game. What that going forward, I don't know. But I suppose at this stage of the game and through the groups you're building, aren't you? You know, you're building confidence, you're building momentum too. So the hope is that, right, we've done that, you move on to the next one. What do we need to do? What do we need to improve? Same as in any competition. So it will be interesting going forward. You're right about the second half and some of the Six Nations games. We haven't seen that in the World Cup, but again, the opposition hasn't really offered all the test them for 80 minutes.
I mean, and that's the thing. If there's one opposition that could exploit them if they have a second half like that again, it's New Zealand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, because that was the thing. Just how, I mean, I think the main thing with them is just how both the games I'm referring to, Wales and Scotland, just how much they lost control in the second half of both games, and just how many more mistakes they made. How their ball carriers were just going up and getting isolated and turned over more easily. And I don't know if that's down to like naivety or whatever it is, or arrogance, whatever, but.
I don't think it's arrogance. Maybe a bit of naivety, possibly even a bit of fitness. You know, because they're a big team, a big team, and I think in the Ireland game, I think in the Scotland game as well, they planned to go out and blitz both teams, build up a big lead, and just be unassailable. In the end, they did it against Ireland. They didn't do it against Scotland. You know, because Scotland might be a lighter side, but they're very quick, very skillful backs. And that second half was, I mean, they thought you were going to win that game, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was just all Scotland in the second half, and it was brilliant to see. England held on there for that draw. That's the way I would put that. They held on for that draw, and they were hanging on at the end because they just couldn't cope with the pace of what was coming at them. And I think is a concentration thing, probably a bit of fitness, probably a bit of a few things. But so that is one question that will be on them. And that's certainly going to be tested next week.
Absolutely, I fully agree with that. Australia, on the other hand, aftermath for them is obviously Michael Cheika's walked now. He's left. No surprise there. What do you think of that?
No, well, I think he said he had said he would leave if they didn't go through and win it. He's been a funny one. He's been an unhappy man in this tournament, and he's sort of lashed out a bit at referees. He's lashed out a bit at the media. It's not been a happy camp. So I think it's right that he goes.
Yeah. The thing is, though, I do think with Cheika, though, because I think some Australians might not thank me for saying this, because I know he's not very liked by many of them. But I think he is generally, technically, he's a good coach. It's just with the media game, I don't think he quite gets it the way Eddie Jones does. Because we know how Eddie Jones plays the media, and even though like we can all like hate him and think he's a bit of a dick, you can tell he knows what he's doing with it. Whereas Michael Cheika is just like comes across as all like kind of, you know, like whiny and just like sort of, I don't know the rules anymore, and like he doesn't along those lines.
I remember when Eddie Jones took over England, and I listened to his first few interviews, and I remember saying at the time, I can't decide if this guy's a clown or a genius. The conclusion I've come to is he's both.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
He's both. He's a very funny genius, but he knows what he's doing, and he has built this team up well for this World Cup. There's no doubt about it. We're seeing the best rugby out of England this year than we've seen in the past 2 or 3 years. Whereas, of course, the next game we're going to talk about Ireland, we've seen the opposite, you know. So it's I can't say what you like about him. He's done the job right so far. Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. I mean, he did have one lapse last year, but I think he's learned from that and he's got over that a bit. Mainly, I mean, we can talk about this maybe a bit towards the end if we're looking ahead to the semi-finals. Just mainly like the mentality thing, I still have question marks over, but again, we can go into that more towards the end. Is there anything else you want to say about that game, Australia, England, or? Not really. Result pretty much as expected. Didn't think Australia would win it. They didn't, and they didn't deserve to. The best team won that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eddie Jones, though, he's prepared to make changes. He's prepared to go. Not happy with that. You're out. Somebody else is in, and he's a ruthless kind of coach that way. But as long as everybody knows there's a chance to get in and a chance to be put out, it makes him work a bit harder.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, because he had Dylan Hartley basically nailed on to be his captain going into this, and then because he was injured last season, but he just go the summer, he still just decided, no, not having you now, and sticking with Owen Farrell. Again, I still have my doubts about Farrell. I think he's a great player generally, but as a captain, I still have a few doubts about him.
Do you know, very, very good point about Farrell. He's back to 10 this week, and that didn't surprise me at all. I actually recall another podcast that you know of, and I was on a live thing on Facebook, not video, but we were talking about why Farrell was in there. And I think when we go back to the first game of the Six Nations against Ireland, it's the collection of kicks that guy has. I mean, I actually think he really does orchestrate a game so well. And he's one of those 10s that you don't see an awful lot of these days. When he gets the ball, you're not 100% sure what he's going to do with it. And if you don't, the defence don't either.
Aye.
And he really does place the ball very well off the boot and puts us under pressure. And that's absolutely why he was there, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's a strange with that because he's not the type of player. He's not like a maverick like a Finn Russell or a Dan Cipriani, where if, he gets the ball, then... he could pass, but he could also step. He's not got the speed, quite the speed to do that those two have. I mean, in terms of his stepping and his pace, but he has a big brain on him when he has the ball. And and his kicking, and that doesn't surprise me because he's been doing that for Saracens for years. And also, like I said, just his vision as well. I think visually he's a visionary. He's a very good number 10. So I totally agree with you. I kind of knew they were going to go back to him at 10 for this match.
Yeah. I would say it'd be in the next one at 10 too.
Oh yeah. And I do think generally the combination of him and Manu at 12 and Henry Slade at 13, because that's the thing with Slade there. He's got the left foot option as well, which you can use if needed, and that's always helpful as well. And I think sometimes sometimes Slade also works quite well because I think he's got a sort of 10 kind of brain in him as well, and he's got good, and it's good. It's like when in the 2003 World Cup they had like Wilkinson and Greenwood. I mean, Slade's not exactly the same as Greenwood, but the thing Greenwood gave Wilkinson was that he had that extra pair of eyes and tactically knew what was going on. I think Slade. Well,
it affects their attack plays because they've got Slade there, and Slade is a centre that will, as you say, he has got 10 qualities because he will use the boot. He will chip through. He will chip over the same as a 10. And that's fine. That might sound like a maverick type of thing, but if that's part of your plays, your wingers know where to be, your fullback knows where to be. They're up there for those kicks, and it's another dimension to your attack. Put in, and then I think Farrell has 5-6 really good kicks in his locker. He varies them. He doesn't use the same one every time. He will vary that. That's all part of their plays. England have been very clever in their attacking plays. Rugby's not an awfully complex game, but they have mixed it up really, really well. Even forwards that will carry into contact, recycle. Then they will start doing this offloading game when they get up a wing or get a bit of pace going. And the next thing you know, they're 30 metres up the pitch, just on forward offloads. Fantastic. And if they can keep that going, they're going to be a danger in this tournament, even in the next game. But we'll talk about that a bit later.
Yeah. No, I think there will be. I mean, that should be a good game next week. But yeah, we'll get onto that. Okay, we'll go on to sorry to go on to this man, but you knew it was coming. New Zealand 46, Ireland 14. Your reaction?
Do we have to? Okay. New Zealand, the reason they're the best team in the world is you know what they're going to bring. I don't think they ever go into. I mean, sometimes they don't get out of third gear, but that's down to the opposition. But you know they're going to bring high quality, high tempo rugby every time. You know, they don't play bad games. When they lose, they've been beaten by a team that's really done their homework. They don't play horrible after. I remember the last time I've seen the All Blacks play a really bad game of rugby.
I want to make a slight exception to that. You could say the Australia game in the Rugby Championship, but that was only because they were down 14 men.
Well, that's true. They were down to 14 men, and boy, did they put that right the next game to me. You know? Fantastic. Ireland, couple of things about Ireland. I've offloading. We talked about the offloading in the last game. New Zealand are another team that will offload again up in the forwards. They've trained it into their game. It's part of their game. Joe Schmidt doesn't like offloading because to him it's high risk. And he always said to his players, only offload if there's a fairly high chance of a gain from it. Now, for example, the game on Saturday, Ireland offloaded 3 times.
Yeah.
New Zealand offloaded 18 times. I've seen games in the pre-season friendlies where England offloaded 6 times in one phase of play amongst their forwards. So I think Ireland had a game last year that relied on set piece domination, contact domination, and when they'd established that, they would then have a few moves where they would fling it out wide, kick it to the corners. In the Six Nations, we could see that game had been found out. First by England, everyone else had a go to lesser success, and then in the end by Wales. They just snuffed Ireland out of that game with their own game, I have to add. They played a very similar game, they just played it better.
Yeah.
It was on the wall then for that style of game, and they went very narrow, very, last season we had Jacob Stockdale scoring tries for fun, and the other were doing quite well on the other side as well. This year, Jacob Stockdale has been a passenger in that team. He's not been used. He's not seen the ball. And even when they would, on Saturday, I noticed even when they passed out left, it came straight back in again. They were passing out left, and then a forward was coming up the inside and it was going back in. They really kept it narrow in the pitch. That's a sign of a team that has got a game plan. They're sticking to it, but they're not confident to fly the ball out wide.
That's a question though, Nigel. Are they being allowed to do that? Because you've got a question like, is Schmidt just sticking with this and being persistent that this is the way we're playing?
Joe Schmidt runs a very, very detailed, tight, rigid regime. I've seen loads of interviews from players talking about Joe Schmidt, ex-players particularly, because they'll always tell you a bit more about how rigid he was, how detailed he was in the plays. He doesn't like anybody veering off script at all. One of my favourite players in Ulster is Stu McCluskey, who I think probably should have had a look in at this tournament. Joe didn't trust him because he's a bit of he uses his size, he uses the offload, it go a little off script. Ulster have learned to put their plays around him a bit, so it works. But if you take a guy like that and put him into a regime that doesn't suit his game, he's not going to be effective, I think. Joe would have taken players into his team and this is the role I want you to play. And that may not be the reputation that got you there, but that's what I want you to do. It worked for a while, didn't it? I mean, he's got a 75% win record, so that's hard to argue with. But at the sticky end of the big competition, it was found out, and he didn't have a variation to it. I think not being allowed to, you're absolutely right, because opposition teams right back in the Six Nations had found out Ireland's game, found out how to contain it, attack the set piece, first up tackles, into the rucks, try and get over the ball, just disrupt the possession as much as they could. Ireland didn't know what to do with it. Then what they revert to up the jumper, carry, recycle. When we don't get anywhere, box kick. How many box kicks did we see Murray do on Saturday, going straight to the back three of the All Blacks? That's not advisable against the All Blacks.
Exactly.
And they had a pretty easy armchair ride. Now, they said it was a hard game. They were being very nice. They were lovely guys. The tribute they paid to Rory and Joe at the end were fantastic. They won that game easily on Saturday. They did not have to do anything too exciting, just play their own game. Ireland were disappointing, but I think we know why. So it's a new era now. We'll see how they go. All Blacks, I think even though the opposition were disappointing on Saturday, I think everybody was quite impressed with them. That's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with just how, because last year I think as you said, you pointed out the set pieces and the breakdowns and the driving mauls, and I think that's like last year, along with a really sound rush defence. That's where Ireland found out New Zealand last year and just beat them. But New Zealand, I think, like they certainly did their homework in that regard, and they certainly have looked at what likes of England and Wales did in the Six Nations and Japan to a large extent as well in the group game.
Oh yes, they did.
And they just absolutely took them to shreds, because I was really impressed with just how, because I know like New Zealand's defence is normally good, but just how absolutely clinical the rush was. They were just like up on Ireland all the time. And with regards to the offloading game, I mean, I can fully understand why that would frustrate an Ireland fan not seeing more offloads, but there was a lot of times I wasn't sure they were being allowed to. Like if you look at that Bowden Barrett try, the third try, Sexton tried to pass it, I can sort of empathise and see what he was trying to do. But because if he'd just taken it into the tackle, he would have been just driven straight backwards, and then he'd have had a forward. And because he was fairly isolated, he would have had a forward onslaught over him. So you can question that and say it would be worth taking the penalty there. But I mean, I can see what he was trying to get away, and then New Zealand just counter-attacked and scored.
But that's desperation play under pressure, and it is. But rush defence, as I say. I watched the game actually Ulster played in the first game of the season and against the Ospreys, and same thing was happening. The rush defence, they were struggling to break it. It was a lot of contact, a lot of getting hit back, and what they were doing, because obviously you get the 9 to 10, or you get the 9 to a forward, wrap around to the 10, or 9 to forward, wrap around to the 9, and that's 2-3 moves, but defences can suss those out. What they started doing was they brought the 10 in. Or the 12 into the 10 slot, mixing it up with the forwards, and the 10 with the 12 in behind. And I didn't notice it. It was actually one of the pundits noticed it and said, "Have you noticed what Ulster are doing here?" But what it instantly did was bought the 10 time. It bought Billy Burns time to see what he was going to do with the ball. And he's another 10 with a great array of kicks in his locker. Give him time to put the ball on a 10 pence, and he did. And he just started slotting the ball over, slotting the ball in the corners, into the space behind the rush defence. And the game turned on that. My issue with Ireland, and it's not just this World Cup, it was the Six Nations as well, was if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same result. And we didn't change anything to counter the fast up defence. We didn't play it out wide at all. I was actually astonished how little the ball went out wide, either wing in this. I mean, you can't win a World Cup playing like that narrow. You just cannot do it. I don't know what went wrong. Something went wrong. There was a loss of confidence. They went into their shells and played this up the jumper, middle 20 metres game, and it was so easily taken apart. Japan exposed it big time, I thought. And there was, but again, all Irish fans hoped and thought and prayed, we're keeping the playbook back for the knockouts. We're keeping the playbook back for the knockouts. We didn't have a playbook. We just had that one way of playing. A bit two-dimensional. Very sad for Rory Best and very sad for Joe Sand, because it's going to taint the legacy a bit, because Ireland have never got out of a quarter-final of a World Cup. That's still the case. Right. But, a lot of changes to come. But can't fault New Zealand. They strangled the life out of Ireland. But I think Ireland's game plan allowed that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. And to be fair to you, I don't think it's just been this year. I think since Joe Schmidt started, these kind of performances have been creeping in now and again. Like 2015, you had the game against Wales, which you lost, and Wales worked out, and then the quarter-final against Argentina, albeit I know Ireland had a lot of injuries then, but still defended so narrow, played so much up the jumper, and Argentina just exploited that game.
Very true, and I think 2015, one of the things that came out of it, though, was the lack of depth Ireland had in positions, and that was something they were totally determined to try and stamp out this time round. I think when the 31 were named to go, there was a bit of disappointment amongst a lot of Irish fans, because it seemed to be, there's the old familiars in there again. We don't think, I didn't think there were some players there that were not picked on form. They were picked on knowledge of the systems and trusted by Joe.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Because
there were some things I think could have done better, which is easy to say when you're an armchair and you're not an international coach. But I think there was a comfort zone there that he maybe went back into a bit and thought, I trust these guys, I'm going to bring them. But they weren't necessarily in form on league. They carried injuries. Robbie Henshaw, who I didn't think played badly when he did play, but he's hardly played any rugby in the last 2 years. And it was a real gamble taking him. Joey Carberry, my understanding is he might be out for most of the rest of the season, because he had a temporary repair done to his ankle, which now needs a permanent repair done, just to patch him up for the World Cup.
Jeez.
I've heard that from two sources. We'll see, and where I've heard it suggests it may be true, it may not be, but there may be an issue for him. There were just a few players there I think were on the wrong side of injured. I understand why he took them, like Sexton. I understand. I don't think Murray's hit form since his injury. His neck injury at all. I think he's slowed up a bit, and I would say his neck. So it was. But the great thing is we have a new coach coming in now, new coaching set up. He can clean the slates as much as he wants to, I think, and put his own stamp on it. We'll see going forward. But it certainly sets up a humdinger of a semi-final for next week, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I just want to touch on that depth issue there, because I think actually this Ireland team, there are more so than 2015. Certainly, there is actually like some decent depth there. I mean, because Carberry, if you can get him fit, I thought actually, apart from that one kick when he kicked over to George Bridge and just got exploited very badly, which was a really bad kick. Apart from that, I thought he actually brought a bit of spark on Saturday, and I thought Jordan Larmour, he certainly should have started over Rob Kearney, in my opinion. But again, as you said, Joe Schmidt just going with what he knows, what he trusts, and that's kind of always been his way, I think. And he's not. I think you can argue over, even though he's brought like quite a few young lads into the team, he's not given them as much of a run as he possibly could have done. You could argue that.
Yeah. He was never a coach. He's not the kind of guy that takes chances. He's clinical. He's very detailed. It's not a squad. I mean, for example, you've seen Eddie Jones bring players in and out.
Yeah.
Quite frequently. Joe was so detailed in his structure on attack and defence in the game. It's not easy just to bring somebody in and say you're in the team on Saturday because you understand the detail of what he requires. So that made it difficult for players to get in. A Joe Schmidt squad is always hard to get into. I mean, the last person I think really walked in was Jacob Stockdale, because he just couldn't ignore his league form. He had to give the guy a run. And it worked out last year. As I say, he wasn't used this year. The wings weren't. So that's the last time I think somebody has really pushed into the squad quickly. Players have come and gone. The depth is there, you're right, and the quality's there. But it's having the faith to use them and having a system that allows players to come in and out of. Not so detailed, not so structured, where you can't say, yeah, he's had a great season, he's a fantastic player, but he doesn't know our play, so I can't bring him in. I haven't time to show him.
Yeah,
and I think that detail required, So, yeah, that may be different under Farrell. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, because that's the thing also. I think you still have to put form above your trying trusted, I think, because the players are... I think I'll say Rob Kearney, for instance, because I don't think Rob Kearney has hit his best form in a wee while, and I think he's past it. That's just my opinion. And I think like he's just been picked purely just because Joe Schmidt knows him and that he knows what he's going to bring to the table. And I mean, I think you've covered it very well there. Instead of giving someone like Larmour more of a run, Larmour, who is a wee bit more of a maverick, he offers a better burst of pace and attack, but defensively he's still, I think, getting there, and with systems he's still getting there.
I think that's very key though, and I think that's again the sign of a coach that had a rough run in a tournament. The team's not been winning games. He's been put under pressure. They've gone insular, and I think possibly very high in his mind was defence. He didn't want to pick players or put too many players in there that, whilst they might offer a lot going forward. And that makes you wonder, is it a coach that's expecting to come under the cosh a bit? And he probably did after the Six Nations. So defence was key to him. But, it's like anything else. If somebody knocks the door enough times, they're going to come in. They're going to get in. So what happened this tournament, really, didn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, if you want to move on from that, that's cool. Unless there's anything else you want to
Yes, please.
Sorry to put you through the ringer there, man, but do enjoy listening to what you had to say, so appreciate that. We'll go on to Wales against France. We'll talk about the game first, and then we'll talk about the little bit of controversy that Jacko Piper got into afterwards. I've said my piece. I've said my piece about this in a YouTube video. Just say it, but anyway, let's just talk about the game first. 2019, Wales very lucky. France should have won the game. What are your thoughts?
Well, we wondered what France would turn up, and the good one turned up. The exciting France, the chaotic France. Every time they have a bit of a breakdown in the team or breakdown, they seem to play really well after it, don't they? They really did put Wales under the cosh in the first half. They were, after 15 minutes, you just thought there's only going to be one winner in this, because Wales have not woke up here. France are all over them. And they scored 2 tries very quickly and got a nice 14-0 lead, or was it 12? That was 12. Yeah. Lead. But then they did a thing that France did. it's as if, and I'm going to say it's not what they did, but it's almost the way it appears. Like they've scored 2 lovely tries and they sat back and admired it for a while. They switched off, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean that Wainwright try was, that Wainwright try was just sloppy. I mean, okay, you can drop a ball in a tackle, but there was just the guy who was tackled, I can't remember who it was, so pardon me there, was just so isolated. There was no one around him to clean up or take out Wainwright. And Wainwright's, I mean, he's quick for a forward, but he's still a forward. Yeah. So you think there should be someone about there who could catch him, and he was just nowhere near him.
They went sloppy, but we've seen that in the Six Nations. We've seen that in the warm-ups. They're a team full of brilliant players. They seem to almost want to play the fast-flowing rugby of the France of years ago, when they really were a fantastic team to watch and one of the best teams out there. But they just seem to go for a while, 15, 20 minutes, then just switch off. And they go into this sort of twilight zone, and the opposition then can get back at them. And that happened on Saturday. And it was a fairly even game. It was a good wrestling match until obviously the incident where I'm not going to remember his name.
Vahamania.
Oh, I'll probably still get it wrong next time. Ridiculous thing. I mean, to have they were in possession, they were on the line, and to do that is just unforgivable. For your own team, never mind the potential damage. I mean, we all know. I mean, it was so blatant. He had him around the neck, penalty given, and then he just lost his head, doesn't he? And just put it on the guy's face. Clear red every day of the week, and you just thought, right, that's the end of it. He's off. He's gone. And I think most people called the red before he got it. It was that blatant. Off he went. I have to say though, the French defence was actually superb. I thought they actually contained Wales. And I actually thought they were going to get away with it. I thought they were going to pull it off.
It was kind of a role reversal of 2011. I thought because Intermac in the first half missed a couple of shots at goal. 2011, Wales missed 4 shots at goal that game. And there was also an incident where France were 19-13 up. It was around the 67th minute mark, about then, and their forward pack were in the Wales 22. They set up the position really well, and Camille Lopez was in the pocket, and they were ready to go for the drop goal. Then for some reason, now I have no explanation for this, but Lopez went to the right and went out of the pocket, and they just spun it out and they dropped the ball on the wing, and it was a knock on. So I just was absolutely baffled at that. So
he obviously had in his mind to feign them into, I'm going to drop kick here, let's go. It was a funny thing, France had their opportunities to win that game and make that try at the end irrelevant. And there was a bit of controversy over that. I've watched it today again a few times in slow-mo. I've absolutely no issue with that try. It was not forward.
Yeah, it was a weird one because it kind of spun forward and then went back into different hands.
But what it did was, to try and keep it simple, was look at where it was ripped out and look at where Tipperick caught it, and Tipperick behind where it was ripped out. So it doesn't matter if it went forward and curved back; it was collected behind. And we've seen a lot of shouts and cries about this. And every time I look, because my first reaction was that was forward. And when I saw the first replay, I thought that was forward. I've sat and looked at it again today and in slow-mo and looked at it, and it's not forward. It was perfectly good. I think the ball did kind of spin out and curve a bit, but when you look at where it was ripped out and where it was caught, it was not forward, and it was a good try. And they absolutely scraped through that game. Well taken try in the end, but the calls for France unlucky, that they played the better rugby. At times they were the classier side. I mean, they really did look good in the first 15, 20 minutes going forward. The passing was great. They did switch off. They did kicks. They did some bizarre plays where you thought, these are nailed on points. Why are they doing this? And in the end, they paid the price for it. They didn't. Basically, it's the old adage, they didn't take their chances, especially when were offered up to them. And they could have won that game, even with the 14 men.
Exactly.
And they made the wrong decisions. And Wales kept at them and got their reward in the end. Wales did not play well on Saturday.
No, I agree.
Did well at all on Saturday. But we've been chatting on some of the funnier forums, if you like, about they've been taking some stick for the way they played. The simple fact is they won ugly in the tournament. They won't play that. Yeah. They won't play that badly next weekend. We know that. and your team and my team lost ugly. Different things. So they're still in there. It was a bad performance by them, but they scraped through.
Because that's the thing that Wales have done, especially in the last 18 months or so under Gatland, is even when they've not played well, and they even have performances in the Six Nations when they won the Grand Slam where they didn't play well. You could argue at least 3 performances of the 5 they didn't play well at all, but they still have a habit of just knowing how to get things done. And I think they're
not the most stylish side. Yeah, they're not the most stylish. They're not the fastest. They're not the prettiest to watch. But they grind the result out. They get there, and that's all that matters. Won them a Grand Slam. They're still in the World Cup. So not been pretty, but they've been effective.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, especially because I think Squid's Rugby touched on this very well. It's like when they're in the Six Nations, whenever they were in the opponent's 22, almost every time they were in the opponent's 22, they took points, whether it was 3 points or a try. They just and they got the penalty. They just kept chipping the points over. Which, even if you're not winning games, actually having the ability to do that at least keeps you in contention. It gives you a chance.
Yeah. And we talked about that earlier, and it is an old cliche in rugby, but it's true. It's when you're in the red zone, taking something away from the game. As you say, it can keep you in the game, put you ahead, but it keeps the game alive for you. It didn't do it. Ireland didn't do it. France did it at times, and switched off that. I think the right team went through because we might like the flair of France, we might like the champagne rugby, but I actually think Wales will do a better job in the semi-final than France would have done because you just don't know what would have turned out for France. They could have went out next weekend against an informed South Africa and got hammered.
Yeah.
They could have made a close game of it. You know what Wales will make a dogfight of that, and we know that.
Yeah. Because that's the problem with France as well is they can play like the champagne rugby. They can have forwards who can be physical and get off the game line, but they just lack the structure, the cohesion, the ability to appreciate how to break an opposition team down and just be smart at key times. I mean, is that
just to finish it off?
Yeah,
just to finish it off. Actually, was it there was a Wales and France game? Was it the Six Nations game? I think it was, wasn't it? They didn't play them in a friendly, did they? In the warm-ups.
No. France played. Yeah, no, I was just saying the warm-ups. France played Scotland. I was just saying
that was another one. Yeah, that was another game where France came out and played really, really well in the first half, and then fell to pieces in the second half. And it was the same thing. Okay, they didn't fall to pieces in the whole half on Saturday, but they went to sleep for large chunks of the game. Like the second quarter of the game, it was all Wales. They did come back and make a bit of a fight of it, which they didn't do in the Six Nations. But that's the France we have at the minute. You don't know from this minute to 5 minutes later what you're going to get with them. They seem to on. There's a concentration, or I don't know what it is. They're a very strange team.
Yeah, I do think. So, pardon me. I do think under Gaultier, because he's going to be taking over the head coach. I do think under him they will get more structure. They will, because I saw signs of that this World Cup. They were getting better with where their pods were set up, etc. And they will get that side of things a lot better. It's just what's between the ears for 90 minutes, and if they can just keep it together mentally enough.
Keep it going. Yeah. Keep it going. Keep it going. Not hot and cold.
Aye.
I mean, you got cold games. They blow hot and cold within a game, which is.
Exactly. Used to be they'd have one full game they blow hot, and blow. Now it's in a game they have both.
In the game they blow hot and cold. Correct.
Yeah, and with regards to Wales, as I think you've touched on that really well, actually, it's they got the job done. They won, and they will be, I think, better equipped to make a fist of it against South Africa next week.
Josh Navidi's a big loss to them, though.
Oh yeah.
That big loss to them. So it'll be interesting to see how Moriarty goes. I mean, he was the hero and the villain, wasn't he, on Saturday?
Yeah.
He got just on the park yellow card, but he won the game for them in the end. So, but he'd probably start against.
Yeah, I think he would.
So it's a depth issue now with Wales. What's in behind? Navidi's a big loss, so I think he's a very good player.
I think actually Wales did miss Jonathan Davis a lot on yesterday. Because I mean, I thought he, like, actually Owen Watkin didn't have a bad game. Hadley Parks, I don't know. He's just been this World Cup to me. But Jonathan Davis is really the glue that keeps that midfield together, and I think he was a big loss there for Wales, definitely. And
Yeah, he has a bit of quality for them, without a doubt. Yeah, definitely.
And like I said, just because of him, I think that defense, because he's the main captain in the defence of the backs anyway, and I think that was missing a bit for Wales, with Owen Watkins just throwing it at the last minute. Anyway, anything else to say on Wales-France, or shall we move on?
No, I think good game to watch. Nothing clinical about it, nothing fancy about it. Typical Wales got the job done. But it was close.
Fair enough. Aye. Okay, we'll move on to South Africa against Japan. 26-3 to South Africa. This match, I think we both thought this might be a step too far for Japan, and so it proved. But I didn't expect South Africa to win as convincingly as they did. What are your thoughts there?
I think well, they blitzed it a bit in the second half, didn't they? I mean, I remember on one of the groups that I actually thought Japan were really close to opening up this South African defence. They just kept peppering, throwing the ball. I mean, the passing was beautiful, but fair play to South Africa. Their defence was superb. They let nothing, and they put players back. And no matter what the Japanese and the Japanese have a fantastic range of passes and sets. And you can see the way they don't even set up pods; they almost set up groups of players, like dashes of groups of players, and they will interpass and between. They're a joy to watch, but they just couldn't get through, could they? I mean, they just could not break that line. And I think in the end, valiant effort by them, and they've been superb in this World Cup. And I'm delighted that they may have a nice competition to play in next year, both at club and national level. That's good news. But bit of work to do there. They couldn't break down that defence. I think in the end, just the sheer physical strength of the South Africans came through. I mean, their centres are powerful units, and I think the Japan team really struggled to contain those two. Every time they got the ball, they made yards. Mapimpi, even on the wing, was doing them a lot of damage. They were going in their possession. They were hitting brick walls an awful lot, getting drift back, making a lot of ground. Some nice moves, but when it came into the red zone, South Africa really tightened it up, and they just couldn't break through. Centers, their wingers, they were gaining yards all the time, and they battered that Japanese defence, which held out for a long time, it has to be said.
Yeah.
But they capitulated, and I thought the scoreline flattered South Africa a little, because they managed to string a couple of tries together very quickly, which, straight away 14 minutes on, that's it. And it made it look like a bigger defeat than it was, I think.
Yeah,
but they were just too good for them in the end. Too strong, too powerful.
I really think those two tries just came from South Africa just wearing Japan down, and Japan were just out on their feet by then. And that was really just how South Africa did it. They just, I did say to a few folk before the game, I just questioned whether Japan could cope with that sort of physicality that was just going to be pummeling at them for a whole 80 minutes, and they just really struggled, and by the end, they just really struggled and tired them out.
We saw a sign of that in the Scotland game, didn't we? Because they blitzed Scotland, ran away with a good lead. They were kind of hanging on at the end of that game. Scotland came very close to coming back out.
And that's the thing, actually. Sorry for interrupting. That's the thing, actually. In that game, I mean, I thought at the breakdown, for the most part, we were actually on top of them for large parts, and we were physically, battering them, and they were starting to wear down towards the end of the game, and with for a few drop balls, or maybe like if Japan missed a tackle here or there, we might have got a draw at least, but what wasn't to be. But I thought physically we were very decent against them. But I mean, I thought because South Africa have bigger players than us, they would be on them for 80 minutes, and that was where I thought the game would be won or lost.
I think that Scottish game actually would have given the South African team an awful lot to look at, because it played out the same, with one difference. Their defence really held up in the first half, and they didn't let them through. And if they will have analysed all the games against Ireland, against Scotland, but I think particularly the Scottish game, because physically Scotland did match them. It was defence really let Scotland down a bit, and let tries it. But in the second half, we could see that there's always somebody walks in there. Second half, we could see that.
It's becoming tradition with you guys.
Yeah, Scotland had dominance in the second half, and another 5 minutes in that game, it might have been a different result. And the same thing happened in the South African game. I said Scotland, South African game. They started to flag in the second half, but they only had 3 points on the board. So I think that's the difference in those two games. They're very similar, except for that. They didn't have much on the board, whereas against Scotland they had a good lead and they managed to hang on to it. So you probably gave the South Africans an awful lot to look at and formulate against Japan. But they've been superb. They've been superb in the tournament. Delighted to hear they're going to be in the Rugby Championship. Delighted to hear the Sun Wolves are coming back.
Yeah.
That was a bad call, I thought, because what we can't do is allow this success of Japan just to fade away.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It would have just faded away.
Yeah.
So delighted to see that. They are a tier 1 nation now, and we can't deny that.
Absolutely. I mean, I've said that throughout the tournament that they're anyone who says they're a tier 2 nation now is a muppet, and I stand by that opinion. But I thought I fully agree with what you said. I think South Africa, and also just how impressed South Africa were with their discipline as well. I think the only drawback with South Africa, I think, is they were a bit sloppy with the final pass, or if they went into a tackle and they were on a good attack, they knocked the ball on. That happened quite a few times. I think that was the biggest drawback with the defeat and with their victory, pardon me. And also, I want to ask what you think of the Beast's yellow card. I thought it was the right call.
Well, the way they judge these things now, I mean, they look at them. There's a tick list, isn't there? Very silly tackle, of course it was. So they decide, is it a foul tackle? Yes, it was. And then when it comes to card, then it's how he lands, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It was borderline, but he landed on his shoulder.
Yeah, because the shoulder sort of cushioned him, then he went up. I think if he just landed straight in his head, it would have been. And you can tell, straight red. But I mean, you can tell by the way he made the tackle as well. He'd known, I think, after he lifted him, I've made a mistake here. I just looked at his body language and the way he put the Japanese player to ground. You just think, I've made a mistake here. And then after he went off, he just apologized, said, "Look, I'm sorry." So I mean, it was clear after he made it, he tried to pull out a bit, but it was too late by then, and he just had to make sure.
I think yellow card was fair enough for that. It was literally 5 degrees off being a red, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think if it had been like anywhere just above like there, the shoulder, then definitely a red card. But
red card.
But I think the fair call was made. So anything else to the South Africa Japan game?
No. I think we've covered it pretty well. You said about the passes missed. In fairness, I think Japan did have a bit of a rush defense on them. They were coming out of the line quick too. And I think that sometimes makes players make mistakes because they try and offload the ball back normal.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, there was a couple of times I thought South Africa when they had overlaps out wide, and there was one time Willie Leroux hit a forward pass, and you just looked at it and think like if you just gone back a bit, because the player was clearly behind him as he made the pass and he had to run forward. It was forward, of course. So, I mean, stuff like that, I think, could have done better there. But, there were times the Japan rush defence will agree to get at them a bit and force things. But, yeah.
So, good game. Honestly, the right 4 have gone through.
Yeah. On the whole, I think that's the case. And going to the semi-finals now, England, New Zealand will be a tasty one. What are your thoughts there?
Can England win it? Yes. They certainly won't be the favourites.
No.
I think, without a doubt, New Zealand, they're going to have to take it off New Zealand. So it's a bit of a heart says, yeah, we might see an upset here. Head says, no, we won't. Mm-hmm. But it's doable because England are a bit of an unknown against that quality of opponent, and you have to factor in things like you said earlier in the Six Nations games. They fell away a bit in the second half. They can't afford to do that against the All Blacks, or they'll come to a 15-20 point defeat. They're not going to blitz the All Blacks the way they've done some teams this year. Mm-hmm. They're not going to get away. They'll not score the points off it. You can't kick the ball to that back three willy-nilly, and then because sometimes you'll end up under your own posts. That's how good they are. So it's going to be a tough one. It's going to come down to the physicality, the packs, the speed, carries, the Tuilagis, people like that could have an impact. But again, so do the All Blacks. Everything that England have got in their locker, so do the All Blacks. Yeah. And I think it's going to be a fantastic game. Can't wait for it. I think it will be the game to watch this weekend coming. Who will win it? Probably the All Blacks, but let's hope England could maybe spring a surprise on them. I think they're the only team in the tournament at the minute, on what I've seen, that could beat them.
Yeah, I just have my questions just about the England side's mentality. Like if the All Blacks put enough pressure on them early doors, and if it goes into the second half, and I think it's going to be a tight game going into the second half, how are England mentally going to keep it together? Because that was the biggest thing against Wales in particular, how it was a tight game. They just mentally collapsed. And when that happens, like they were just having isolated runners. Owen Farrell was kicking out on the full, which he's not like him at all. And it was just, they just really just broke down. And again, if that happens, if it's tight here, I just have question marks as to whether England can keep it together. Because New Zealand will definitely keep it together.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You're completely on that. I agree with you. The question marks are all about England, aren't they?
Yeah. Because I see this. Because I see even from the South Africa game, the way New Zealand have gone into this tournament. I mean, a lot of folk had written them off after the Rugby Championship, saying, "Oh, they're not as good anymore. They're not going to win 3 in a row." And they just come in and just showed why they are the world champions.
Guess what? Yes, they are. Oh, absolutely right. You're 100% right there. It's hard to see a win for England, but I think they could beat them.
Yeah, it's not.
They could beat them. Yeah.
From a Scottish perspective, I'm rooting for New Zealand for obvious reasons, but I think England do have a chance. I think I do think New Zealand will just have a bit too much for them overall, though. I think it'll be about one score possibly would do it. I think New Zealand will just edge it.
I think it depends on what you said about the second half mentality of the English. That will determine it. If they can stay in it for 80 minutes, it could be a one-score game either way. If they capitulate at all, like they did against Wales, it could be 15, 20 points against them. The All Blacks, but they won't stop. They actually did stop a little against Ireland, I think. Ireland scored 2 tries towards the end, but
they'd won the game by then.
It was done and dusted, and I think they had injuries by that stage, frankly. So, but yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the All Blacks are certainly out and out favourites for this, but it's a game that could have an upset potentially.
Yeah, well,
potentially.
I will believe it there. See what happens. South Africa against Wales next. This is going to be 2 teams that don't play the most attractive rugby on the eyes, but 2 teams that know how to grind out wins and how to wear opponents down. What are your thoughts here?
I actually think this one's hard to call.
I'm the same, actually. Yeah.
A lot of people are saying, "Oh, South Africa will thump them." Blah. I don't think so.
No.
I don't think they'll play anything like they did this past weekend. They weren't good this past weekend, but they squeaked through. They're a bloody hard team to break down. The Welsh are a bloody hard side to break down. Good defence. Dogged defence, good pack. They hit the line. It may depend on personnel. I don't know how serious, for example, Jonathan Davis's injury is. I haven't heard anything about that. They have a really good back line. I think they will frustrate the South Africans every bit as much as the South Africans will frustrate them in defence. As you say, they're similar in ways. I think South Africa sometimes are a bit quicker about how they go about things.
Yeah, I think South Africa definitely have a bit more powerful pack than Wales do as well, which could be a telling factor.
That could be a telling factor if they dominate scrums, for example. Yeah, because if you get a domination in a scrum, you could end up with so many scrum penalties, the game goes out of sight, doesn't it? But again, we'll know that in the first 5-10 minutes when they've had a scrum or 2. Hopefully, we'll get parity for the neutral observer. Let's see some of the rugby winning the game. Would you make South Africa slight favourites? I suppose on paper you might.
Yeah,
you would.
Yeah, just based on form of both teams in the World Cup. Even though Wales have won all their games, they still, obviously the performance against France and then Australia, they weren't perfect in that game either. I'd say
I think it's going to be a bit of
South Africa just slight favourites.
I think it's going to be a bit of a dogfight, that one.
Yeah,
I really do. I would find it very hard to call who would win that one, to be honest. The experience of World Cups maybe I think, you would just have to have South Africa slightly ahead, but not by far. So there's a game that could go either way, I think.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I mean, I'm struggling to think of which way I'd want to call this. I mean, favourites, I agree. South Africa slightly, just on form alone, but also got to remember that Wales have beaten South Africa in the last 5 of the last 6 times they've played. So the form book, in the head-to-head form book, is definitely in Wales's favour right now. But I think this is definitely a better South Africa team than the one they played last year.
Yeah.
So it's just really hard to call. I don't know which way it's going.
No doubt, Erasmus has picked that team up
Absolutely.
without a doubt.
Yeah,
he's made a good team out of them, but they're better. I still don't think they're way ahead of Wales, and I can't call that one. Really can't. That's. Looking forward to games, obviously, and in the first one, I'd probably favour All Blacks more than. I would favour the All Blacks in that game more than I would favour South Africa in this one, if you get me.
Yeah,
these two teams will be closer.
Yeah, I think the South Africa-Wales one will be decided because most of their games in the last 10, 15 years or so have been one score settling it, and I think that will be the case here again. Again, I think a lot of it does actually depend on how Wales cope with the South African physicality, I have to say. I mean, I know that sounds like a cliche because how physical South Africa can be. I think that could be possibly what tips the balance a little bit into South Africa's favour. But at the same time, Wales are smart enough to know how to deal with physical teams as well. So
that's right, and stay away from that. And they've got the Alan Wynne-Jones factor, haven't they? Which can't be underestimated. The guy's a beast of a player, fantastic player. It's really, really hard to call. As you say, if the physical dominance of the South African pack comes to bear early on, it could go away from Wales very quick. So we need to see if that's going to happen first. I'm not sure it is because the Welsh pack are not an easy pack to run over either.
No, absolutely.
If they get parity, which I actually think they will in scrums, then it's going to be really down to the plays and the defences and the attacks. So, and that's going to make it close. It's going to be another typical South Africa game, isn't it? So we'll see. Hopefully. I mean, obviously we're Pro 14 fans and we've got South Africa and Welsh in our league. So, although I suppose with some of the ladies in the groups we're in, a better sort of edge for Wales, haven't they? But I'm
wanting a North versus South final, and I'd rather it be New Zealand from the south and not England from the north. I'll say.
Well, yeah, probably only one winner of that final, but it's going to be one or the other. When it comes to the final, if the form book's anything to go by, it's going to be New Zealand and another. But we'll see about that next week.
Yeah,
we could see a surprise. I think if New Zealand get into the final, they'll win it. Frankly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This is their big game, I think, this weekend.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. I think New Zealand, if, as I said, they're just looking so good right now. They've peaked at the right time, and if they overturn England and get through, then I don't see whoever wins the second semi-final having enough in it to overturn them. Okie doke. Is there anything else you want to mention? Let's talk about a little bit about the Jacker Piper thing before we wrap it up. What did you think of that?
Is that definitely a genuine photograph? Because he seems to have an
apparently it is. Apparently it is.
I don't know what he's doing with that right arm, but it's well built. It doesn't take away from the fact the guy did a heinous act in the game that could have caused serious injury to another player and deserved to go. It probably, as I said, I'm going to say this again, if it's correct, and people are saying it is, I don't know. It's a little ill-advised of him, I suppose, to be photographed in that position, and it's going to back some criticism. It doesn't really change any outcomes, though, does it?
No, I mean, and that's the thing. Like referees, I know myself a wee bit. You mingle with them, players and coaches and fans afterwards, and you just talk about the game a bit. I mean, I will say though, I wouldn't go so far as to take a photo with any team's fans or that. But honestly, it's only really mainly just because of if it goes on social media, you know what the keyboard warrior mob's like. It's just going to be all, oh my God, how dare you kind of thing. And then of course this day and age that spreads, and it's
well, I was going to say it's social media, but it's a photograph he's actually posed for, so that's why I'm saying it's a bit ill-advised. Had it been a picture taken off a camera where he was standing in a bar chatting to some Welsh fans and like, oh, come on for a laugh, that'd be a different thing. There'd still be outrage because people like being outraged these days. But
maybe that's what happened. I mean, we don't know like the ins and outs of it. Just seen the photo.
It looks like a posed photo, but as I looked at it, my initial reaction was, I'm suspicious of this, but if it's genuine, then fair enough. I'm no photo expert. It's just his arm did look big, but anyway. So it doesn't change anything. Might get him a lot of social media feedback, but it doesn't change anything.
No,
I mean, he made the right decision on the day. It was a red card. That's the end of it.
Yeah,
see, that guy has announced his retirement, although apparently he had announced he was going for the World Cup anyway.
Yeah, I'm not entirely convinced by that. I think, and to be honest with you, I don't think Fabien Galtier would be. He'd be first on Fabien Galtier's speed dial list after that. So I can't see Galtier going to pick him again anytime soon. So
his club will be delighted, though. That's for sure. His club will be delighted.
yeah.
Big fella. But no, I mean it's a storm in a teacup. I think about the picture thing. I get people's outrage, but does it really matter? No.
No, and that's the thing. Like so you can have like a bit of banter and that, and that's something we still need in all walks of life, really, because it's a complicated world as it is. But I'm not going to go into all the politics and that anymore. Just even though it seems to poke its nose in to everything these days, one way or another.
Great term I heard from the lady that's in one of the Irish rugby fan forums, Deirdre, banter tampon. Fantastic saying. World's full of banter tampons. Nice one, Deirdre. I can't get that one in my
head. Okay. Right. Anything else to talk about, Nigel, or shall we wrap it up?
No, we wrap it up, mate. I mean, we've covered the games and what we think next week. But good weekend of rugby. I didn't enjoy our game, obviously, but for the World Cup, a good weekend of rugby. And let's hope this weekend's as good.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it there. That's a good thought to leave it on. Okay. Hopefully that it will be a good semi-final weekend and we don't get any controversial incidents and that by the end of it, we're just talking about the rugby.
Please.
I was going to say, that's probability not going to happen, but we can dream, we can pray. Okay, I'm just going to stop recording now. So thanks for having coming on, man. Much appreciated. And lovely chatting to you. I'm sure we'll do this again sometime. And take care of yourself. And I'm just going to close up here.
Okay, mate, no problem. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, guys.